Hey gang, Froggy and Jefficus here, and today we're going to talk about the ascension of Warhammer 40k and the fall of an IP that both Froggy and I really love, Star Wars. Froggy, what's happening with Star Wars?
Yeah, so Star Wars was massive, and it still is massive, but I feel like currently it's just like kind of falling off. It is not keeping up with the output that Warhammer potentially is, especially with like the younger generation in terms of like video games and stuff. You just have a lot of mid series on Disney Plus, whereas Warhammer has like all of these shows on Warhammer Plus, and then they have all of these video games that everyone loves, Space Marine 2 and Dark Tide, and obviously Total War that's coming out, and it just kind of feels like Star Wars is letting the side down on the sci-fi side, and it's maybe, is it gonna get overtaken potentially?
That we should clarify that Star Wars is still the bigger franchise by far. It almost like doubles or maybe even triples the interest and like the revenue that Warhammer is bringing in, especially if we're talking just Warhammer 40k. But there is a decline, especially recently with the franchise, because nothing is really releasing. The last time that we got a show, it was just the second season of Andor, and Andor it was phenomenal. It was one of my favorite shows of all time, but it's not the kind of thing that Star Wars releases all the time. It's not necessarily kind of George Lucas's vision of Star Wars, and I'm not sure if it's Dave Filoni's vision of Star Wars either, because Dave Filoni is now kind of the president over there. He's running the show, and he is still very much attached to the story and plot of The Mandalorian and Grogu and Ahsoka, very light-hearted heroes who are trying to uplift the setting. But Warhammer 40k kind of has their own hero, their own mascot that they're setting up. Froggy, do you want to talk about Lieutenant Titus a little bit, or Captain Titus?
We love Titus. Titus...
We love him.
Yeah, Titus has been kind of adopted as this, like, mascot for GW. Like, obviously he was in Space Marine 1, but during Space Marine 1, GW had a very strong opinion that anything that happened in games, and any, like, campaign or, like, story things that happened in games, were not canon. They were not, like, legit part of the Warhammer universe. They were just kind of almost like fan-made stories off to the side that had no bearing to the overall narrative. But obviously then in the last like year or two, with the explosion of Space Marine 2, we now have Titus at the forefront of Warhammer. They have adopted him. They have canonized him. He is part of the main Warhammer narrative now, especially where he's like talking to Guilliman, he's talking to Calgar, I think he is talking to the Lion before the Lion talks to Guilliman as well, which is kind of funny. And it's just, yeah, and he's just like, they've just seen this cash cow and the influence that he has had.
It's the Master Chief effect.
It
right?
is.
Like he's like the main guy. He's John Warhammer, so to speak.
And like it's just funny because they were so against like any games having a bearing on the narrative, and now they're like, well, it was a super successful game, so why not canonize him, make him legit, and then like Space Marine 3 can further push the narrative potentially towards like 12th edition, because we don't know when Space Marine 3 is coming out, probably in 2030, and then
or the show
or the show or the Amazon show.
It could happen.
Yeah, and then obviously with Total War 40k, there will be a campaign in it, and Dawn of War 4. Will they canonize those? Probably. They've put the Lion in one of them. They've put a Primarch in one of them. They have never put a Primarch in a game. That's huge for Warhammer. They are so pedantic over what they allow people to do and what parts of the IP companies are allowed to use, that having something like a Primarch in a game is just absolutely massive.
Yeah, and apologies if you're coming over as a Star Wars fan and you have no idea what we're talking about, but it is a very big deal for us Warhammer fans. And the reason why is because Warhammer 40k, unlike Star Wars, started out as a tabletop war game, first and foremost, whereas Star Wars hit the big screen in the 80s. George Lucas had a vision and he executed, and it changed film in the 70s and 80s. Star Wars was crazy for our culture, nerd culture, the culture of the world, and it has taken off ever since. Obviously, when George Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney, he made the biggest mistake of his life. Not necessarily of his life, because I'm sure he made a lot of money, but it was the biggest mistake for the franchise. And for me, the reason why is because a lot of the books that were written after those original movies released, and even after the prequels, were really good books, and they were decanonized by Disney. But Warhammer 40k, and Games Workshop specifically, has effectively been grinding to make sure that the continuity of their IP is solid. And they are effectively doing the opposite of what Star Wars did. Star Wars released as this explosion, this cultural phenomenon in theaters, and Warhammer 40k is slowly angling towards that show on Amazon, which I think is going to be the tipping point. What do you think, Froggy?
Yeah, I mean, the Amazon show is going to be absolutely massive. It's also because, it's headed by, or more or less headed by, Henry Cavill, and everyone and their mums knows Henry Cavill. If you're watching, a Twitch streamer, for example, only people who watch Twitch are going to know who that streamer is. Whereas if you have someone who's like Henry Cavill, it's not just the people watching that platform who know who that is. That is massive. If it was just a YouTuber or something heading the project, then it wouldn't have nearly as much attention as it does. But yeah, it's the Amazon deal is going to be huge, and again, it's a massive step forward for GW and not really letting the reins loose, but at least loosening them a little bit to let other people make more with the IP and not to give a little more freedom to how things escalate in the narrative overall in the lore.
Well, it's their push towards trying to become more of a licensing company. And this is this crackpot theory that I have where we're starting to see revenues in the licensing department of Games Workshop start to slowly creep their way up and actually represent a significant figure in Games Workshop's earnings every year. And I think that they see the gold here. They see the goal, and they are not going to completely shift away from minis production because they've got a stranglehold on the tabletop war game industry. They are the industry effectively. They've kind of got a monopoly, but they are going to start competing with their IP and their license in film and in TV and in other sorts of products, as long as they can maintain that strict and solid continuity of their IP.
Yeah, they have a very strong, need for quality control. They are going to oversee literally everything that is made very closely, like they are currently doing. But there is a very clear change in that the games that they let be made, or oversaw be made, or previous animations or the secret level episode, etc., they were all kind of done in order to funnel people towards buying minis, because that was what their main business was, is to sell minis. They're a tabletop company, they sell minis. Whereas now it's kind of looking more towards how far they can stretch the IP over various endpoints to get as much from that, rather than funneling more more people towards tabletop. Because, like, if you ask the average Space Marine 2 player, they probably don't even realize that Warhammer is a tabletop game. I've talked to many people in my chat when I'm playing Space Marine 2, and they've gone on my Instagram and like been like, "Oh, you paint? You can paint Titus? What?" And I'm like, yeah. Warhammer's a tabletop game with miniatures. You buy them and you paint it. This Space Marines 2 is just like, it's just like a little subsidiary on the side. Like, this isn't the main Warhammer bit. And a lot of people just don't realize that, because video games and TV, like with the Amazon thing, it's just so much more accessible. And like, one of the big things that I have been thinking about is that accessibility. So with Star Wars, it's basically all movies, all TV shows, everything's been on TV, in the cinema, and now it's all on like Disney Plus, one of the biggest like streaming platforms. Whereas Warhammer keeps the majority of their like TV content on Warhammer Plus subscription. So so if you're not someone looking for minis, potentially, like going onto the Warhammer website, because you're only like Space Marine 2, you're only Darktide, you're only Total War, then you're not going to know that Warhammer Plus exists. You're not going to go and pay that subscription to go and watch those shows. And they are really good shows. Like, I've watched all of them. They are very good shows. They're really good, high quality shows. But like, there's just no accessibility to them. And they don't really publicize it very well, if at all. Like, they post it on their Instagram story if there's a new episode of something every so often, but their main, like, marketing stuff is still on tabletop.
Yeah, and I think that when it comes to movies are very accessible, mostly because they're a social thing. Like, you can get with your friends, you can go watch the latest Star Wars movie, and it's a whole event. It's kind of a cultural phenomenon. It's something that, at least for my generation, I'm an oldie, that we've kind of been trained to do, like, oh, new Star Wars movie, cool, let's go watch it. The Last Jedi, oh, this is probably gonna be good. Nope.
Yeah.
But with Warhammer, with 40K, it's not quite there. But I think Games Workshop had an aha moment. Froggy, we call them in the United States aha moments. Like they came to a realization.
Yeah.
Where when Total War Warhammer completely saved Warhammer Fantasy, they were like, oh shit, we have been dropping the ball. We have had our priorities misaligned. We need to take video games way more seriously, because they can significantly impact the franchise overall, and they are very potent. And I think that Total War Warhammer 40K is going to be another step in that direction of Warhammer 40K kind of ascending and becoming more of a, like, I guess, more impactful in overall culture, something that is more commonplace in the gamer sphere, nerd sphere, and just in the normie sphere, even if they're able to pull it off. I think that a lot of the bigwigs over at Games Workshop, they're kind of coming to their senses a little bit, or maybe there are new bigwigs at Games Workshop and they understand that the virtual medium is very powerful. I'm sure they learned this during COVID as well. The virtual medium is very powerful. The internet's very powerful, and they should be leveraging it as much as they possibly can.
Yeah, it's also like I'll sorry to go back to it, but with the accessibility thing, a lot of the lore in Warhammer is very like sort of hodgepodge in some places, and it's very hard to follow. And they've sort of got this stereotype of a community of gatekeepers where if you get one thing wrong in the lore, you're suddenly a tourist and you know nothing. Whereas with like things like Star Wars, everything is in the movies, everything is in the games. It's very like, it's accessible and it's like visually accessible. Whereas like, if you wanted
to consume.
And if you wanted to get into Warhammer, it's like you have to read 50 million books to understand everything. You have to read all of the like.
I hope you're ready to watch this really big nerd named Bricky talk about these fucking
Yeah.
weird ass armies and aliens and creatures for the next 6 hours, buddy. Like, you better buckle up.
Having like YouTubers and content creators does help because like obviously it's free marketing, it's like getting the word out, it's sort of dumbing things down into bite-sized chunks for people, but it's not a big output in terms of
it doesn't reach the
audience.
normies.
Yeah.
It doesn't reach normal casual viewers because those guys are they're going to the movie theater. Like, just straight up. They're not going onto YouTube to look up something that's out of the way. Because otherwise, everybody would know everything about everything. Everybody would know about every anime that releases. Everybody would know everything about every other sci-fi series that releases. No, they are going to the movies, and at the movies, you've got one of maybe 6 to 8 choices, and they go, oh, Star Wars. I know that. Let's watch that. That's family friendly. Cool.
Yeah, and it's also like with games, like things like to go away from Star Wars for a second, with like Age of Empires, it made like history, even if it was like paraphrased, available to more kids than would otherwise be interested in then going away to Google the entire like Battle of Hastings lore or whatever. So like having something like Dawn of War, a large chunk of lore and like keep everything in a very digestible way, will make it a lot easier in that sense as well. So, and also like obviously Rogue Trader, it's very lore heavy. You learn a lot about Warhammer playing that game, and then we have Dark Heresy coming out, and then with Total War 40k, if like there will be a campaign, there will be multiple campaigns like there are in Total War Warhammer 3, and that will also like, it's just making it way more accessible than it has ever been, because and like that's why when they retcon things, I haven't really been pushing back on people. People come and complain to me that XYZ has been retconned or whatever, and I'm just kind of like, yeah, it's going to be. They're going to simplify everything so that everything can be more digestible and accessible and welcoming to new people. Because when you're a new person in Warhammer and you're faced with this massive wall of stuff and you don't know where to start, you're more than likely just gonna walk away. You're not gonna bother with it. It's like, oh, it's too much. I'm not gonna try. Like there's way too much. And like I have been in that position where it's like, I don't know what books to read, so I'm just not gonna read any. But like I have now read some books. But like a lot of people have that, where especially in this day and age where the work-life balance is so like work orientated, you just don't have time to like invest in these hobbies to the extent that they have made it to be needed to.
Yeah, this is actually why Star Wars is really successful. It's so simple. It's so easy to get into. In Warhammer 40k, let me just think about weapons that Space Marines use. You've got bolt guns, you've got chain swords, you've got fucking plasma guns, you've got power swords, you've got thunder hammers, you've got power fists, and all these weapons work in very different ways. In Star Wars, you got lightsabers, you got blasters.
Yeah.
And it's the same across everything. On the ships, the spaceships, they're just bigger blasters. The Death Star is effectively just a big lightsaber. It's super simple, and it's like that intentionally. So I think that there is a lot to be said, and I don't think that Games Workshop is going to oversimplify Warhammer.
No.
But when they do introduce it to the casual audience, it definitely is going to be from the perspective, and Space Marine 2 is a very good example of this, of like, hey guys, this is what our IP is about. You've got these genetically enhanced super soldiers called Space Marines, and they fight the bad guys. Whoa, that's super cool, right? Like that's exactly how it's going to go.
Yeah. It's also like with to bring up the drama as we can, the female Space Marines conversation, the female custodies conversation, they also have a very big like boys club stereotype where a lot of the times you'll find comments on, like, if it's like a female content creator or like a VTuber or something, you'll get a lot of comments like, oh, women coming in here ruining this hobby, like Warhammer's dying because women doing XYZ, and it's like, it makes no difference who is reporting on it. It makes no difference who is in the armor. I kind of see it as like it kind of sucks that they're retconning, and it kind of sucks they're attitude at this retcon, like, oh, they were always like this, blah blah blah, and basically just gaslighting the community. Like, I recognize that that's awful and bad of them and they shouldn't have done that, but I also recognize that from a business standpoint, why wouldn't you do that? Why would you keep cutting out women and not adding them into the roster just because, like, it makes no difference to the lore, to be honest. Like, you don't have any stories of space marines going and having kids with people or whatever, and suddenly if there's female space marines, the female space marines are gonna be like MIA having kids somewhere. It's like, no, none of them can have kids anyway, they're all sterile. Like, it makes no difference.
Yeah, I think that what we'll see when it comes to a lot of future media is you'll see things like the Sisters of Battle animation that is now on Warhammer Plus, where when it comes to representation, I guess specifically, and this is veering off topic just a little bit, you're going to see a lot of those existing armies just get represented more and more in novels and in media. You already see this with, just as an example, the book Paromaster, which Mike Brooks does have like a political statement in the book, but navigating around that, the two main characters, or I guess like 3 or 4 main characters, you've got pretty equal representation across the board in regards to the sorcerer that accompanies Solomon Akura, the main character, the lead, and with the kind of rival inquisitor that stands opposed to the main antagonist. So you're going to see a lot of the stuff moving in that direction. I can totally see it for like the Amazon show as well, right? Like where the main characters, like let's say Henry Cavill, and I would trust him to do this, does an adaptation of Eisenhorn. If Henry Cavill did an adaptation of Eisenhorn has a lot of different characters, all male and female. It would totally work when it comes to like, hey, we're trying to create this like politically correct, I guess, series. Like, this is safe. This is pretty safe. There you go. You don't necessarily have to be like, okay, we're just going to do the Ultramarines guys, and you're going to have one female character, and it's going to be this Imperial Guard major. Here you go. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be that.
Yeah.
And Games Workshop can kind of save their own toes a little bit here and not have to veer completely into the female Space Marine territory if they don't want to, destroy their lore or retcon or anything or whatever.
Yeah.
But when it comes to bringing it all back to how this relates to Star Wars does not have that problem, because
Star Wars started out
on
with...
the offset, they started off family friendly, basically.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that everyone in the family can look at the screen and go, oh yeah, like that's my favorite character for this reason or for that reason. And that's why it has been so successful, and kind of why Warhammer has been kind of a slow adopter to normie culture, I guess you can call it.
It's a lot more like, oh, there's another person who kind of looks like me, like I'm gonna be more invested in this. So yeah, it's Star Wars set themselves up from the start to be as like diverse as it could be at the time, to attract as many people as it could. Whereas Warhammer, like, it started in a garage with a group of guys just playing like a tabletop game and just sort of building from there. So they didn't really, they never had, well, they might have had, but they never really had that like right from the start, we're going to take over the world and this is going to be a massive thing and we should from the start include as many like types of people as we can, so that in the future we don't have to like retcon things just so that we stop alienating half of these people.
They were just doing what they thought was cool, and then it turned into a business model. They had success with that business model because in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, like if you were to look at the stereotypical nerd, it's basically just a dude, like just a dude who's going to a game store or who's super into computers or consoles as they were releasing. To be quite frank, like a lot of women were just not gaming. They weren't into it. And it's so crazy because I've seen this with like World of Warcraft, where, World of Warcraft is not Star Wars and it's not Warhammer, but you look at the modern audience for World of Warcraft, dude, it is not the same as it was with Classic WoW. If you log into Classic WoW today, the stereotypical player is going to be some dude in his 20s, 30s, 40s, or maybe even 50s. Whereas if you log into Midnight, the most recent expansion, the odds of you having, like, in a 20-man raid team or whatever, like 7 women is high, dude. Like, it's common. If you want to go, if you want to get an internet girlfriend, go play WoW. Go play Final Fantasy. That's where they're at. That's where they're hanging out at.
Like, I played WoW. I played high, like, end game content WoW for almost 10 years, like mythic raiding type content. And I don't think I was ever in a guild that had more than like 5 people in the raid team out of the 20 that were over the age of like 30. Like, they were all young guys. And then, like, on top of that, you'd have at least a quarter of the raid group be girls. Like, and then when I started to stop playing, it was a lot higher than that. It was maybe like half, maybe a bit more than half. Like, it was definitely becoming more equal in like who was playing, but it was still always like very like young people. Like, there weren't a lot of like of the older generation in there.
Yeah, and this actually circles back to what we were talking about, the main point of the topic. So Star Wars is getting ready for a reinvention, and we're gonna see this with the release of the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, because Dave Filoni, the new head over at Lucasfilms, is going to be trying to readapt all the shows that they've been making to the big screen. Like, they're going to try to make it more broadly available to everyone. That is going to be their strategy moving forward. And I believe a lot of the films that Kathleen Kennedy, the previous big head over there, wanted to make have effectively just been canceled. They've all been axed. And so they are preparing to reach out to the next generation of kids, basically, the next generation of young people, because they know that if they're able to make or produce more lifelong fans, then they're going to make more money at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And Warhammer 40k is also doing this, but currently with video games, soon a TV show on Amazon, and if that pops off, then we'll probably see the license extend to Warhammer 40k movies, to other Warhammer 40k shows. It might hit Hollywood, we'll see.
Yeah.
And all sorts of other media.
Yeah. You can also see it in Warhammer with how they're dealing with Slaanesh. In the last like couple of years, like 5 years or so, they are slowly like disbanding everything that is currently Slaanesh related and kind of re-sculpting and rebuilding and like redoing the odd bit of lore in the back that you don't really notice to make it a lot less of the like kind of sex pest god and more of like a family friendly, you can get your kids into Warhammer with noise marines or whatever type of thing. So they are kind of trying to make Warhammer more towards the younger kids, because like, of course, if you get kids in when they're kids, they're more likely to stick with that thing when they grow up. So
and then they get their kids into it.
Yeah. So
they become recruiters for you.
Yeah. So there are some like big things happening this year with Star Wars. Like, in comparison to Warhammer, Warhammer has Mechanicus 2 coming out this year, which is like an XCOM tactical turn-based kind of strategy game. And Star Wars also have a very similar game called Zero Company coming out at the same time. So I don't know if they know that they're coming out at the same time or if they've like timed it to like compete against each other, but it would be really interesting to see the uptake of each of those and then like the ongoing success of each of those, because they are pretty similar in at least like game style and like play style. So that would be a good kind of representation of people in like their teens and up to sort of, I don't know, 30s, who are buying new games, who are getting into new games, and seeing if they're buying the Warhammer one or if they're buying the Star Wars one. I think that would be a really interesting little bit of data to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think that one thing that we'll also be able to measure is going to be whenever Total War gets around to Star Wars, because they're going to get around to Warhammer 40k, obviously, that's already in the cards.
Yeah.
And they're going to milk that for the next 20 years. But for Star Wars, Disney will probably see they made a Warhammer 40K version of this. They can probably do a Star Wars version of this as well. Yeah. And you'll probably see something like that. Will it be as varied as Total War Warhammer 40K? Probably not, because I don't know how much variety Star Wars can offer. I guess it depends on which point in the Star Wars franchise they decide to launch the Total War game, or maybe they just do it with individual campaigns, and you have like a Clone War campaign, you've got a freaking Empire Strikes Back campaign, you have an Old Republic campaign, whatever it is, they could totally make it work. And the test, the measurement will be how many people are playing each game, how many people, how much money did Total War Warhammer 40K generate over time, how much is Total War Star Wars generating. Like it'll be a pretty good thing to look at and to be able to measure, like, okay, so like when you actually put these franchises head to head, toe to toe, how do they actually do against one another? Does the more family friendly one that appeals to more people, does that do better than the grim dark, very mature, hyper masculine franchise that is Warhammer 40K? So, and obviously we're not saying that we want 40K to be completely overhauled and changed and to become family friendly. I don't want that. I want 40K. The reason why I love 40K and the reason why I got into it is because it is the way that it is because of the grim dark. I love the fact that there's a story out there where orcs literally just propagate and grow humans like livestock and they just eat them. Or the story of the Iron Hands, who were so impressed with an Astra Militarum regiment that they basically made them all combat servitors, and they thought that that was an honor to do that to those people. Like, I fucking love that, but you would never see a story like that in Disney's Star Wars. Just, it would never happen.
Yeah, Star Wars is a lot more of the family friendly, and Warhammer does have that grimdark stuff all covered, which is a good like niche, well, kind of niche to have. Like, there isn't a lot else in grimdark that I can sort of just list off at the moment. It does kind of fulfill that section of the industry. But yeah, it's not also always about how much the game makes, it's also like how many players are playing them. Because if you have a game and you and you sell a lot of it, then it's all well and good that you sold a lot of it, but if everyone only plays it for a couple of weeks after the release, and then like every so often if they want to do a replay, then it's not actually very good, because then you're kind of losing, you're not getting that loyal brain of that person. They're not invested in the universe. They're invested for a couple of weeks when they're playing. So when you look at like some of the bigger like Star Wars games that are out like now, like I know they're a little bit old now, like Battlefront 2 and like Jedi Survivor, they're both kind of averaging about maybe 2,000 players like daily for the last year. Whereas you have a game like Space Marine 2, like, alright, it's newer and it's just had a massive patch, but ignoring the massive patch that just came out, it has been averaging about 15 to 20,000 daily players for the last year. And like, yeah, it has decreases after big patches, it has decreases after, like, if there's no content coming out, which can also be seen on Battlefront and Jedi Survivor and whatever else other games you want to compare them to. It happens with Darktide, it goes up and down. But Space Marine 2 manages to keep it high, so it's kind of winning on the video game front for Warhammer, because like, to be able to keep that volume of players for that amount of time is actually really impressive for a game. That is rare for a game, like, unless you're like Dota and like League of Legends. Like, to have that, like, that amount after this amount of time, 2 years after it's been released, you still have above 10k daily players. That's kind of insane.
Yeah, and if you're in the camp of people that thinks that it's not a fair comparison because Space Marine 2 is a live service game and something like Darktide is a live service game, look at Star Wars Battlefront 2 and its Steam release. So Star Wars Battlefront 2 had been out for a long time, and it had a pretty dedicated dedicated community of players, and it was a live service game up until the live service was effectively discontinued back in 2025. But it never got anywhere near where Space Marine 2 is at.
Yeah.
And you could argue that it's because it was niche, like it was a niche genre, but that's not really an excuse. I think it's just the quality. It's the quality of the game. I think a lot of people have very fond memories of Battlefront 2, but it's not something that captivates you in the long term. Space Marine 2 keeps you playing in the long term, whether that be through the gameplay systems themselves, the community, the story, the IP itself, or because of the game, because of the gameplay, because it's really fun. Like I like, for me, I personally prefer the gameplay of Darktide. I think Darktide is a really solid, and when it comes to the actual brick by brick gameplay piece of the game, I think Darktide is a better game than Space Marine 2. But what keeps me logging into Space Marine 2 is the visuals, dude. I fucking love watching my character shred through Tyranids and through Chaos Space Marines. I fucking love it. It's so good. And they've done a really good job over the past year of buffing a lot of the underutilized weapons and stuff and making them actually feel punchy. And so it feels good to shoot. It feels good to hit things. Like, it just feels so good to play.
Yeah, and like it's visually beautiful as well. And like people complain about Saber, but there's so much attention to detail in so many of the missions. Like when I was playing the other day with one of my lore friends who doesn't really play games, he's obsessed with lore, and we were going through one of the missions and he was like, oh wait, is that mini? Is that? I have one of those. I have one of those on my shelf. And then he went and got it and he showed it to me and I was like, oh, that's so cool. I didn't because I don't know every single mini that exists, and I think it was a discontinued one as well, so I had never seen it. And it was just like they had to have someone like tell them like, you need to put this here, and it's like no one would notice. You wouldn't notice that it was that unless you already knew like what it was. Like, you're not going to go into that mine, in that cave, in that operation, find that little tractor thing and then go and Google it to find out what it is. But like, to someone in Warhammer, that's a really good like little Easter egg almost, because it just shows how much care that they have actually put into the game.
Yeah, 100% true.
Yeah, and it's like, obviously they fumbled with the voice pack a little bit, but
those sons of bitches, dude. Holy shit.
Yeah. That was
what a
very
fucking cash grab.
Yeah. But like,
we are veering off topic, Froggy.
We have.
Closing thoughts on this.
Yes.
Star Wars, top dog. Currently top dog. They are raking in the money. They are winning the culture war. They've got, everyone knows what Star Wars is nowadays, except for maybe younger people who are like, what? Like, there are no Star Wars movies. It's not a thing anymore. But they are definitely on top for now. And I think that Warhammer 40k is going to probably overtake them, or at least become a viable competitor in the future. Not by adapting the exact same practices and policies and storytelling that Star Wars uses or employs, but mostly through Games Workshop's business maneuvering, strategy, and high quality products, high quality video games, high quality minis, high quality shows. Games Workshop. So just a very quick aside. In the past, Games Workshop would license their IP to any and every mobile video game developer just for the exposure. They're not doing that anymore. No. They're very serious about the continuity and the reputation of the franchise. And so that gives me a lot of confidence in things like the Amazon show or Total War Warhammer 40k. Like, Games Workshop is going to make sure that those products are high quality, just like their minis.
Yeah, exactly. Like especially especially after like the World of Warcraft movie that came out and had such a massive backlash within the Warcraft community.
Yeah.
Like they don't want that. They've seen things like Fallout. They've seen what Amazon have done with Fallout, and they're like, okay, we kind of trust this. We're gonna let you do this, but we are going to like maintain that oversight just to make sure that it's like within the bounds, you know? But yeah, Games Workshop have a very big brain approach to the quality control. They are very pedantic about it. They want to keep everything as like, they want to be seen as this kind of more upmarket, kind of exclusive, very high quality. And you can see that in the minis, like maybe not with the most recent ones, which were a bit rushed and the mold lines were terrible, but the majority of their minis, they're beautifully sculpted. They're really nice to paint because they're so well sculpted, and the plastic is gorgeous. Like, I go and do Trench Crusade from like a resin print, I go and do Conquest, I go and do like literally any other tabletop brand of mini, and I start scraping mold lines or like print support lines or something, and it's like, this plastic feels terrible. This is just so bad. And like, if it's plastic, then it's probably a bit more flimsy, like the D&D minis that you can get. The plastic they use is kind of rubbery, and it's just like, ugh. I hate this. So then they've kind of trapped people in Warhammer, because like, I like painting Warhammer. I do want to paint other things, but I just don't want to deal with like other plastic once I've been spoiled by the glorious GW plastic. I don't want, like, they have spoiled us. That's why they have a monopoly pretty much on tabletop miniatures.
Oh yeah.
They're just so like pedantic about the quality, and if they're that on the quality for the minis, they're not going to back down on that quality for other IPs, especially now video games are such a huge thing for them, and like TV is going to be such a huge thing for them. They are going to keep that quality up, and they're quite late to the game as well. Like, there has been, like, obviously the Fallout show, there was the Borderlands movie, there's been like, what did
I think they're simply taking their time.
Did they do like a Halo show?
They did
something.
Oh gosh.
And like,
don't even know. Stop.
Exactly.
We don't need to talk. We don't need to talk about the Halo show, okay?
Exactly.
We don't need to talk about Master Chief's butt cheeks. All right.
They have seen all of these other games, or like not strictly from like movie IPs, going into things like TV or like other games or whatever, and it failing terribly, and it just fumbling so hugely that everyone's like, oh, if that's what that show's like, then I'm not gonna look at the other things that are connected to that because that was bad. Like, they've seen that, and making TV shows, making games is not a impulse decision. They will have planned this or been planning this for the last like 10 years, maybe. Like, maybe
we see
7
that
years.
actually. It's taken them so long just to get to actual writing with Amazon, because they've been going over just all the legal things and all the things that they want Amazon to do, what they don't want them to do, etc., etc. The behind the scenes for this extends for years, and the planning, like, it's crazy. But I think this is probably a good point to wrap it up, Froggy. We're jumping out of the bounds.
I can keep yapping for ages. But
yeah, for real, dude. But thanks for joining us tonight, gang. As always, the Emperor protects.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe, everything. Bye-bye.